What is up? Welcome back to Rad Potential. We got the blue Miata back in the garage for buttoning up. I've got myself a super sick air intake system, and we're gonna figure out an intake setup, fix the rest of the exhaust, and button up a lot of these little things in order to get it running. And this will be the first startup after the rebuild. And then we gotta flash the Mega Squirt with a new base map and start tuning it. So follow along, and we're gonna get this thing back roadworthy and start putting some miles on it. So something I went back and forth on for quite some time after doing the swap and taking out the turbo setup is how I wanna set up the naturally aspirated intake. This is a 1.6 car with a Mazda Speed 1.8. The Mazda Speed part's not relevant other than it's a 1.8, and I debated using the factory 1.6 setup, a factory 1.8 setup, but the issue is I'm not using the standard MAF or whatever either of those cars use. I've got a, down here you can see, where is it? It's hanging down here, my sensor. I've got a GM air intake temperature sensor. So I debated on what to do and plumbing that into one of the factory intake setups, but I ended up going for this, which we will unbox for you now. Like I said, super sick air intake system. eBay special. I don't know if this is a real brand or not. Regardless, not that important because we're probably going to be modifying it to plumb the air intake temperature sensor. So like I was saying before the camera died, it's not super important because we're basically just going to be using this to plumb our IAT into, and it comes with a little heat shield, some clamps, and hoses. And it looks like there's some holes already on here. I think this was generally for, that's just a mounting hole. It looks like it. Generally for an NB. That might be a idle air control hole, and this maybe we can plumb up for the IAT sensor. We'll see. But anyway, it's just a standard black pipe with a filter on one side, and we're gonna see how we can modify it to fit in here. And I think it's gonna look pretty nice, just being a standard black pipe. So that kind of worked out better than I hoped. There's less modification of stuff than I needed. Since it already had this hole for the NB temperature sensor, I was able to fit my GM IAT in there, and this is like a plumb to the crankcase breather, which I'll do later. This is just kind of mocked up. It came with some bracket that's supposed to support underneath here and to a bolt hole here for the crankcase breather on the NB. This valve cover for the Mazda Speed doesn't have it, so I don't have power steering on this, so I just made a little bracket. I'm going to paint it black that bolts to the power steering bracket, and then the little nub screw hole on the bottom here, and I'll cut it up a little bit shorter and paint it black, and I think it's going to be perfect. And it also comes with, where'd it go? This super cool heat shield that is gonna like bolt on here with hose clamp that's not even big enough to cover it all, but it'll do something, I suppose, keeping some of the exhaust header heat off of the intake. So that's cool. Moving on to the next thing. All right, so I've made a little bit more progress off camera. I'll give you an update. I didn't like the way I had this mounted before, my mount I came up with, so I used the mount that came with the kit, but it didn't, like I mentioned before. This Mazda Speed valve cover has different bolts up here, so I took it off the center bolt and I just put a little hose on the bottom of it so it wouldn't scratch it up, and it's just resting on top of that to give it support. With the clamps, it's pretty well held in place. I've got my kind of jank temporary IAC plumbing in there, and I've got my heat shield and everything mounted, whatever. This is permanently mounted here. The last things I have to do are fill it with fluids. I need engine oil, which I've got here in the garage, thankfully, and then I've got on the shelf over here, I think I have some more gear oil. Need to fill the trans up, and then fill it with coolant. And then I'm gonna get my laptop out here and load the new tune. I'll show you what I go through for load a new base map or an old map I had from my old black car when it was running 1.8 NA. So that's where we're at. So I've got the car up in the air now to fill the trans fluid, and I wanted to check something because, as you see, I got a little bit of puddle there, and I was worried that after all this work, somehow some seal I missed in the transmission. I don't know if it was leaking along one of the split lines or something, but I got under there to find out that just the drain plug. I never tightened the drain plug after draining it all, so good news there. So regardless, now that I have it up in the air, I pulled the fill plug out, and fun fact, maybe if you knew this or not, the 6 speeds you can actually just fill from the turret and not mess with the pump. The Miata 5 speeds are not. You can't do that. The turret has a separate fluid reservoir. So we're gonna fill up. It's supposed to be about 2 quarts or just shy. We'll top that off until it drips out the fill plug, and then we'll be good to go and get the computer out here. Well, unfortunately, I think I'm gonna hold up for the night. I've got the trans filled, and I was just getting ready to get my laptop out here and fire up for the first time. And then I remembered it's 9 p.m. and this header is not connected to the rest of the exhaust. When I had this running turbo, I modified the exhaust to mate up with the downpipe, and now it doesn't line up in a factory location. So my plan is to just fire it up, run it like open header here till I get the timing set and running, and then drive down to an exhaust shop, or maybe I'll buy a welder this week since I don't have one up here and I need one, because I modified that when I had Eric's welder up here, and obviously it's not up here anymore. So I'll check in tomorrow, or at least the next clip, you'll see the first fire. All right, we're back, and we've got the trusty old HP. We are gonna see if I can get Megasquirt loaded up and connected to, Tuner Studio loaded up, and see if we can connect to the Megasquirt here. First, we're gonna get Tuner Studio up, making sure it's talking to the Megasquirt under the floor. Hopefully everything's still connected. I've got the fuel pump relay pulled out so I can crank it and build fuel pressure, because this was a new bearings and fresh relay rebuilt. And then I'll try to load the my old NA naturally aspirated tune with stock injectors and so on. Again, last time I tried to get this hooked up to Tuner Studio and Megasquirt paired up after a long time of not using it, I couldn't get it to connect, and I did the same thing again. It just spent 30 minutes trying to get this to talk to this, and realized that I'm dumb, and I pulled out the fuel pump relay before I started to connect it. And with that pulled out, it doesn't power the ECU, or it drops some link there, and it'll never find and connect to your ECU. So as I said, I've got the fuel pump relay pulled out. We're gonna crank it and see if we can build oil pressure here. Hopefully it cranks and everything's good. Well, it seems like the battery is not connected well enough. Try that again. There's oil pressure. Sick. All right. Now we know it's making good oil pressure. We got half a tank of fuel. Plug that thing back in. I think we're gonna start it. You can tell it's gonna be loud because, as I told you, we are currently just open header, or header, yeah, dumping right underneath the car. So this is probably gonna be ungodly loud, and then I have to check and set base timing to make sure that's all sorted since I had the whole car apart. So I forgot that there were some obvious differences between how I had my old black car set up and how I had this Mazda Speed motor set up for the turbo. I've got NB coils, and it's just set up differently to run this 1.8 in the 1.6 chassis. And so I'm just gonna run the same, I'm gonna load the same tune I had on this before when it was turbo, but I don't have the big injectors anymore. So I'm gonna look in here and see what I have, because I don't remember what I grabbed. Those are blue. So I think that means I've got 1.6 injectors because I just pulled them off the shelf. I think I should be able to start it up with those injectors. They're 230 cc's versus I think the 1.8 car is a 260. But I'll have to go in here and change this. And if you can see, I went to engine and sequential settings off the basic load. Here, cc per minute, we'll calculate what we need. So injector flow is 230 we said for 13.1. So I guess that's what we need. We will burn that. Close. Need to cycle it. And now we will see if it starts up. All right, back at it. Moment of truth for the super loud start. See if this thing starts or blows up. I'm nervous. Well, it almost fired. Well, there you have the first start. It's super obnoxious. I don't know how I'm going to drive that down the street to the exhaust shop. That is terrible. And it stinks. A little smoky in here. Well, I'm going to look this over, make sure nothing's leaking, get the Megasport in the car with me when I start it up again, and monitor it a little better, since that was just a unpaying attention fire. So now I fired it up. I let it run for, I don't know, 30 seconds. It's starting to stink. It's burning off stuff off that header since it's been sitting in my attic for 3 years or something. The AFRs were running fine. It was idling like 13 something, but now I'm gonna fire it up again. I went up here to ignition settings. I'm gonna check the base timing. So ignition settings, and then you go ignition options, wheel decoder, and then over here we want to fixed advanced, fixed timing, timing for fixed advanced 10 degrees, no advance over here. And now I'm gonna fire it up and go check what it actually is off the crank. With my timing light, I got it hooked up now. I'm not gonna film it because I'm out here by myself. So the timing light showed me that it is like at 8 degrees or so. So I'm gonna go in here, ignition settings again, ignition options and decoder. And then with it fixed at 10 degrees, I'm gonna trigger advance it or retard it 2 degrees. And that should put me right around 10. And I'll try it again. So after that, it was spot on. So now I'll go back in here one more time. Ignition wheel options. I'll leave that at 2 degrees, but I'm gonna push this back to use table. Burn. Close, and now I'm good. So now, since this is way more obnoxious than I thought it was gonna be, I think I'm gonna push the car out to the street, drive it to an empty parking lot, then let it get up to temperature, bleed the coolant, and mess with it some more. It seems to be running okay. It's smoking a little bit. I don't know if that's just burning crap off the exhaust or burning out the assembly lube. I don't know. I don't know things about rebuild motors. Tell me what you think below. Who knows if it's trash. It's hard to like tell what's going on because it's so darn loud, and I'm just worried about how freaking loud it is and irritating everyone around here. The neighbor's got a baby, so that's no good. Well, I made it over to a just empty parking lot that's away from the neighborhood a little bit because I was being terribly obnoxious, and it's like, I don't know, quarter mile from the house, and it was running mega rich, and I'm sitting here thinking, what the heck? I've changed the required fuel settings for the the stock injectors, but what I didn't do, and I quickly realized because I looked at I went to go change my fueling map, and it was running way up here in the table at 100 kPa, which is like atmospheric pressure. So I remembered I didn't hook up the map sensor to the ECU, to a vacuum line. I had this line here, which is a little short to make it to it. So I had a big vacuum leak, and this line was just sitting here, so the ECU was reading atmospheric pressure, not vacuum under idle or whatever. So hopefully I'm gonna fire it up now and it'll run a little bit better. Well, I kind of got it sorted. It's still idling high, but it's running smoother. Got it up to temperature. Bled the coolant, added some more water. Gonna drive it around the block, and then I gotta go home and get a screwdriver so I can adjust the idle a little more, and then take it down to the exhaust shop. Well, I owe you an update on the Miata. I took it to an exhaust shop yesterday to have them fix the little piece of the header to the rest of the exhaust I was telling you about. And well, they said it was gonna be 85 bucks when I dropped it off. I said, okay, that's not too bad. Well, I got a call this morning that said, oh, what are you doing? Or whatever. Basically, they didn't understand it. They were about to just chop both flanges off and put straight pipe in there. And then the whole exhaust would have been one piece, which would have been an absolute nightmare. And then I re-clarified what I wanted them to do, and they said, oh, that's going to be like $250. And I said, okay, you're crazy. I'll come pick it up today. So then I got on Facebook Marketplace, found this, which I should have just done right away. Miller-Matic 135. It's a flux core, can be used with gas and solid wire. Anyway, stoked, found it for a pretty good deal. It's like 500 bucks, so twice as much as I was going to pay for 8 inches of exhaust work. Got myself my own welder again, and now I just got right to work. I guess I was excited to do it. So I pulled the exhaust off. This is the rear section. I chopped the flange here, put the flange up, and then reset the exhaust back on the hangers. And all I needed to do was, after I spun the flange, was just re-angle. I came out here, pulled the exhaust off again, and cut a little bit different angle on there. And now I think it's gonna mate up perfectly. I'll tack it on the car, pull the whole thing down, weld it up, and we'll be good to go. I'll show you the finished product. Well, I wouldn't exactly come to myself or recommend you come to me yet for custom exhausts. I did stick it together with the rotated, so this was the piece on the end here that I had to rotate that flange to mate up with the stock header location. I'm not going to get too close because it's not super pretty, but I think it's all sealed up and there'll be no exhaust leaks. So we're going to slap this back on the car once it cools down, and we'll have ourselves a stock sounding and quiet Miata. It'll be nice to drive now. All right, moment of truth. I'm going to fire it up and see if we got an exhaust leak. Still on jack stands because I'm kind of expecting a leak, but we'll see. Key. All right, let's see here. Battery's unplugged. All right, try that again. Need to fix that squeaky belt, but sounds like a quiet exhaust. Still got to dial in that idle. I've got my IAC unplugged right now.
but that sounds like a quiet exhaust. Muffler, or the tips nicely centered. Lay under here and listen for it. That sounds good to me. Awesome, mad success. Well, I think that's gonna be it for the blue Miata. I know it doesn't look like much right now, but it's pretty much done. I just gotta do some like actual tuning on the Mega Squirt to get it running a little better, naturally aspirated down. And that's pretty much it. There's not much else to do. Doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look like much now, but this thing is super nice. It's just covered in a layer of dust from sitting in the garage. So I'm gonna clean it up, polish it up. I got that freshly painted finish panel from Calvin, paint matched Mariner blue hardtop, also from Calvin. There's like not a speck of rust on this thing. The interior is in like beautiful condition. Hard to tell with the sun there, but it is the nicest Miata I've ever owned. I'm gonna sell it with the stock wheels with good tires. I'm gonna clean up. I do have the center caps, and then I've got the TRM C1s or whatever those spec Miata wheels are, the silver ones I've had on there before, with some nice Dureza Star Spec 2s. Car sitting on VMAX, Flying Miata VMAX coilovers. What else? 1.8 swapped ends, Mariner blue 92. Anyway, if you're interested, hit me up. If not, thanks for following along. And that'll probably be it for the blue Miata. We'll see if I touch base anything else before I get it listed and sold. But anyway, thanks for following along. Keep it rad.